William Ford Jr. was born in 1968. He was born into a small apartment in Brooklyn, and when his younger sister turned 2, their parents decided to move into a larger home. As his father was a train driver who had seen the evils and racism in Brooklyn, he did not want his children to grow up in such an environment. After weeks of looking, they finally found a home in Long Island's Central Islip. Central Islip was a small black neighborhood which was one of the only ones in Long Island. The family felt segregated and scared to leave the small, safe haven they'd made. William had a normal family and stayed away from trouble all of his life. He had 2 sisters, Beyonce and Leslie. His mother was a principal of a school and his father was a conductor. William graduated from high school in 1987 and became a high school teacher. One day, after a fun night of bowling with his sister and girlfriend, they pulled out of the driveway and were to turn around the corner when a tow truck came barreling down the road. The tow truck had hit them and crashed. As a way to repay William, the owners of the tow truck offered to repair the car as long as William did not say anything to police about the accident. He accepted the offer the drivers made and let them repair the car.
On April 7, 1992, William Ford Jr. went to pick up his car with his best friend Kevin before a night on the town after weeks of waiting for the car to be repaired. Kevin picked up William from his home and drove a few blocks away to the garage where his car was being fixed. When Kevin pulled up, William got out and was greeted by a man unknown to him at the time. There was a verbal altercation in which Kevin assumed to be about the car. After a moment, another man walked out of the garage, whom they later learned was Mark Riley. He then stopped and looked at William. He turned right, back around, and made an immediate left into the garage, at which point William turned to Kevin and said, "This is a man who cursed out my mother." At this point, Kevin was fairly positive there would be a physical altercation. William then followed Mark Riley into the garage. There was a loud pop, which Kevin assumed to be an air compressor. He asked the man beside him if they had a gun, and he said yes. Kevin then ran into the building, only to see William doubled over and grabbing his stomach. William looked at Kevin and said, "Kev, he shot me." Kevin looked at William and then at Mark, and then ran to catch William before he fell over. But he just weighed too much. Kevin looked over to Mark and asked what kind of gun it was. A 22 millimeter, the kind used to shoot birds and rabbits. Kevin kept saying to William to get up, that he would be fine. It was just a 22. After a few moments of this, Kevin saw fluid coming out of William's back. Kevin said he never saw blood. As Kevin was still looking at William and going to help him, the cops came running in. They had grabbed Kevin and forcibly removed him from the garage. Kevin kept saying that they can't leave William. They can't just leave him lying there. As Kevin was being held away from the scene, he watched as the other cops brought Mark with them from the scene. He was not in handcuffs, and he was having a polite conversation with the other officers. They brought him into a limo. Kevin was very confused at this point and did not understand why he wasn't being arrested. Kevin was trying to get away from the cops to go see William. The cops got in his face and said, "Do you understand what happened here? A man was murdered. You need to come down to the precinct and answer some questions." Kevin was in too much shock to understand why they were treating him like the murderer, because that is the way they told him his friend had just died.
Kevin called up William's mother. She knew something was wrong the minute she picked up the phone. William said, "Mrs. Ford, something's happened. You need to come here quick." She asked what was wrong. Kevin just said something had happened. When Mrs. Ford got to the scene, no officer would look at her, and no officer would talk to her. She found Kevin and asked where her son was. William had been airlifted to Stony Brook Hospital. Once Mrs. Ford and Kevin got there, they saw him. They thought he was just lying on a hospital bed. He looked peaceful. Leslie was at home, and their father was at work. Leslie was waiting for any hint of information. Her dad got home around 1 a.m. He asked what she was still doing up. She told him that their mom had left to go pick up William, that he had gotten into a fight. Not long after Mrs. Ford got home, all she said to the family was, "He's gone." Mr. Ford held the 2 of them as they cried. Later, she sent Leslie to her room and told Mr. Ford what happened. Yancy got told what happened over the phone. Her dad called her and said, "Your brother is gone." Yancy screamed and punched the walls. At the funeral, William's mother kept saying to herself, "Just wait until they get to trial." Riley was arrested for manslaughter, but the jury, who was made up of 23 white men, refused to indict him. Riley later got off on self-defense and never spent a day in jail. The family of William Ford Jr. was left heartbroken with a sense of injustice.
In both instances of Tom Robinson and William Ford Jr., there was a miscarriage of justice. The truth of what happened to William never came out of the trial because of the jury, made up of 23 white men, was too worried about the color of his skin to give a fair trial. Instead, they turned the case around and made William the prime suspect in his own murder. Even in Tom Robinson's case, despite all the evidence, the jury, made up of 12 white men, chose to convict Tom of a crime he didn't commit, simply because he was black. In both cases, it was a white man's word against a black man's word, and both times the white man's word was predominant to the black man's, no matter what they were saying. Tom Robinson is just like a mockingbird, innocent, and so is William Ford Jr.